Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're live at World of Wellness, our big wellness week. This is number 120, I believe, and we've been doing these for quite a few years. I'm so excited to have, what I call the future of functional medicine. One of our brightest up-and-coming doctors. He's doing an incredible job in the New England area and a big support of Nutritional Frontiers. So I am your host, of course, Jamie Dorley, CEO and owner of World of Wellness. And I appreciate all support by our healthcare professionals that have been so generous with their time this week and all their great wisdom. So I love doing these because I get to learn too. And one of the coolest things is being part of Nutritional Frontier since the beginning is all the great people we get to meet. And I met this young man up in New England a couple of years ago, and we were doing a VIP dinner, and he kept rattling off all the answers to the questions. And I said, maybe you should be speaking up here. You probably know as much about this as I do or more, being that you're in the front line and doing an incredible job as helping people up in the Connecticut, New England area. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Zach Moran. How are we doing, Doc?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure, and I appreciate you joining us. And, it's been so many different topics people interested in. And before we jump into immune health and GI, some of your favorites, I'd like you to give a little more background about how'd you get into functional medicine? I know some of my colleagues and friends, like their grandfather's a chiropractor,
Yeah.
Mine wasn't, right? So for me, it was my brother's 5 years older. So way before you were even born, Pumping Iron, it was first came out as a movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger in the late 70s. And my brother's about 5 years older, so we watched that movie, and that was it. I wanted nothing but to work out, like weights didn't matter. And then, so I did that and played sports. And then early in my career in college, I was a sports medicine major, and then I came down with an autoimmune condition. And they told me it was genetic and hereditary. Well, if you know me, I don't accept that as an answer. I wanted to know more. And the more I dug into it, I found out that it was really GI health, liver health, stress, alcohol, whatever, you're sophomore in college and trying to figure out life. And it really changed my career path from sports medicine, want to be a sports medicine doctor for a pro football team, to where I was really fascinated by personal health, wellness, functional medicine, which it became known as later on. And that was a big shift in my career. And then, went through the American College of Sports Medicine program for personal training and nutrition. And the rest is history, as they would say, doing sports nutrition in the 90s. And then functional medicine with doctors like yourself since around 2000. So it's almost coming up on 30 years. Wow. But everyone's path is different. Usually it's a personal experience. But how did you get into this?
Yeah. That's what I've noticed over the course of the past 10 years talking to colleagues. A lot of it had to do with personal journeys, personal illnesses, family illnesses, and they got pushed into the field. I think mine was a little more gradual. Very blessed to come from a family of holistic, like-minded individuals. My father was trained as a conventional DO in Canada and Europe. Practices as a physical therapist now. He was big into bodybuilding, boxing as a young individual. So we've always had health and fitness in my life, in my world. And growing up, health and fitness was a big priority for me. I went to college, competed as a CrossFit athlete for about 5 years. I was a college wrestler. I was big into personal health and fitness and coaching. And then it kind of transitioned into more medicine and kept seeing clients who needed medical advice and started asking questions, why, and started pursuing medicine from a conventional standpoint. And after kind of seeing the way that the conventional system operated, shadowing a variety of physicians who are all burnt out and unhappy with the system themselves, I was looking for another alternative, chiropractic, nutritionist, something that was still medical, but maybe not conventional. Naturopathic medicine came up, and being in Connecticut wasn't as common as it is in other places of the country. And when I found it, I figured it was exactly what I was looking for. Holistic. It was root cause. It was, explaining and fixing lifestyle pieces, not just remedying problems. So I jumped into it full force, and been very blessed in that field to find it, to pursue it. I came back to Connecticut with my degree to help out. Initially, it was in the regenerative space that I was really trained to do a lot of regenerative injection therapies. We were doing stem cells. We were doing all the cool cutting edge stuff. Like COVID hit, everything got pulled off the market. And then the demand really has been, being in Connecticut, a lot of the autoimmune conditions, the immune dysregulation that we're seeing more than ever nowadays, the GI component, autoimmune diseases, neurological components. So I've shifted my practice substantially to deal with the chronic immune disorders, chronic infectious disorders. I see from pediatrics all the way to geriatric conditions. And, we're really trying to pioneer root causes, pioneer the idea that we can fix and resolve these things. They're not genetic, like you said. They're not just hereditary. They're acquired as a result of many different components, and they're, again, fixable as well.
I love how you said why, right? Because that was me going back to the health center on campus to where the fourth time the guy's like, "What are you doing here? I gave you the creams. That's all I can do." He put his hands up. I says, "Because my mom is full Italian and she's called everybody all the way back as she can find on the family tree, and no one has psoriasis."
Right.
And, I says, "I know there's no cure. I want to know what's causing it." And he goes, "Oh, interesting. After you came back last time, I actually did some digging." And he says, "This could be, tied into liver function. You stressed out." So I've always focused on, you see all these 5K, you're a competitor. You see these 5K races run for the cure,
Yeah.
right? Donate money. I says, "Man, could you imagine if they donated a fraction of this money towards functional medicine? How many people we can help?" That's always been a vision of mine, is have that community hospital or wellness center where it is funded like that. Because, if we just ran for the cause, which
Right.
is ultimately many times lifestyle, Candida in my case was the culprit.
Yeah.
And if we just focus on the causes, everybody wants to know. I think we've been kind of, I guess, trained or conditioned to think, hey, there's one issue. There's really one ICD-9 code, right? There's one medicine, one solution,
Yep.
and that's it. And, my business partner and co-founder, Dr. James Weiner, he would say, look, anything can cause anything. And if you give the body what it needs to heal, it will, right? And I think when you start getting these autoimmune conditions, back when I got diagnosed, late 80s, it was rare to hear about autoimmune, right? Nowadays, especially since COVID, you tell me, what are you seeing in your practice? Because it's really becoming this whole snowball effect where now what used to be rheumatoid arthritis or IBS or Crohn's or colitis even, now there's hundreds of these, right?
Yeah, and what's unique about it, so we see a lot of chronic inflammatory conditions and cancer in my practice. Those are the two major focuses that we see. We're seeing a lot of deviation from standard types of autoimmune disorders. So we'll see variant forms. We'll see, variant cancer formations, and it's a unique. There's a uniqueness to the diagnosis now that really wasn't the case before. And then in addition to that, we're more concerning than just the rapid increase in number of people in the population getting autoimmune diseases is how young patients are getting it now, which is also a concern for me. I'm seeing, children under the age of 15 with autoimmune diseases, under the age of 12 with autoimmune diseases. And the gastrointestinal system, we know, is a big player with that immune dysregulation. And kids nowadays with, obesity rates and what they're consuming and the vaccination schedules and such are really just getting infiltrated early on. And it's really an earlier onset than we typically would find.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even with, I just saw an article talking about the recommendation of statin medications, right? Which used to be only when it was severe, right? And only for adults. Now they've approved these for as young as 8 years old, right? It's like, oh my God, what's next? So these chronic infections, these cancers, these autoimmune conditions are affecting people younger and younger. So why is that? Is this the perfect storm?
I think it's just an accumulation of a variety of variables. I think as a population, uh, our toxicity has gone up dramatically from our food sourcing to our products and pollutants, our water. I mean, broad spectrum amount of exposures now, much more than ever before. Mycotoxins are huge. We're talking about building materials and things like that that are kind of really not understood well from the conventional standpoint, but are definitely growing in popularity in the functional space. We're talking about the increase in amount of infections that we're seeing and the kind of how uh, the pathogenicity is becoming more significant. Lyme disease is harder to treat. Bartonella is harder to treat. Those infections are much more invasive. We're seeing just from a nutrient standpoint, nutrition is dramatically decreasing, food quality is dramatically decreasing. So not only are you and then, I mean, we could tie in even, a lot of the electronic devices, the stress responses that kids are now under more than ever before, social media, like there's a combination effect. And you can even tie in, like you said, medications. Kids are getting prescribed a ton more medication now than they ever have. So that's also wearing on their system.
Yeah, there's an amazing book called The Sanctity of Human Blood, right? It's one of the few books I've seen on vaccines that's not just spiritual, or faith-based, but actually has all the references from all the professional articles, right? Over 300 published studies. And it showed in there, because I like charts, right? You can understand them, it's easy to see. And it talked about before 9/11, if you followed the AMA's recommendation, you'd get about 20 shots, right? Now it's over 80. It's unbelievable because, all the childhood, the baby shots, it's early childhood. Then you look at the flu shot every year and, it goes on and on and on and on. Over 80 shots. So what role does all these vaccines play into this in your experience?
Yeah, there's a couple components to it. If you think about it logically, your volume of exposure in a short period of time has drastically grown up, right? So you're getting combination vaccinations, you're getting them dosed frequently enough to really constantly keep the immune system on board and upregulated to an abnormal state for majority of the childhood, right? So especially under the age of 5, you're getting a ton more pollutants in the combination vaccinations too, where they're getting preservatives and high levels of additives, though, from a toxicity standpoint. And then they're also getting medication to help sedate some of the responses from the vaccinations, like Tylenol and things to help with the calming of their response. So from a childhood perspective, a kid who doesn't detox well, or doesn't have the resources to detox well, who's stagnant and inflamed to begin with because of their food and their lack of exercise or lack of sunlight because they're inside playing video games and such, and then they're medicated because they have ADHD. Now they're vaccinated, and now they're overpolluted, and now their body can't tolerate what's going on, and now their immune system is going haywire. It's a sequence of reaction that we find to be kind of undetermined and idiopathic, but at the same time, you just map it out pretty logically. You kind of have your reasons, right?
Yeah. So where do you start with your patients that come in? Just give us an idea what that journey looks like when they're coming in to see you. What type of testing do you do? And then what type of therapies do you offer?
That ranges in wide capacity, but I believe that everyone has an individual protocol. I don't do cookie cutter style protocols too much because most of my patients are pretty ill and they need unique care. And so most of my patients will have diagnostics done initially. Some of them have an idea of what's going on. Most of them have no idea the depth or the capacity of how severe the illness is or how significant it is, because 20, 30 years of accumulation, and then they finally come to you where I can't take it anymore. Well, this has been brewing for 20, 30 years, and this has been a chronic problem that's just been sedated or addressed. So a lot of diagnostics to really kind of we're mapping out different capacities of inflammatory conditions, toxicities, infections. We're doing GI testing, we're doing hormone testing, we're doing nutrient testing. Not everyone gets all the testing, depends on the need. It's very individualized. We do a lot of history. And then from there, we're going to use a lot of different therapies, pending really what the patient is able to and logistically capable of. We use a ton of nutritional frontier products because of the efficacious nature of them. Not only are the products quality, but they're also really great formulations. So what's nice about it is that there's simplicity to it. I don't have to give out 45 bottles of supplements. I have 10 to 15 formulations that I can pull from that cover all the bases needed. So what's nice about the supplements is there's a lot of compliance.
Oh, well, thanks. You know, at World of Wellness and Nutritional Frontiers, those were where our formulas were originally created. It's our third generation. Originally, it was Dr. Weiner's Pain Release Clinic, where we did a lot of chiropractic and nutrition, and Weiner Wellness Center. But what we found initially 20 plus years ago was that there's a lot of great products out there, but the protocols are so wide.
Yeah.
You got to do like for our GI Complete, that was 6, 7, 8 products, depending on which brand we use. So we wanted to put those together and then use some of the patent research trademarked ingredients like DMG, dimethylglycine, which has a U.S. patent for rheumatoid arthritis. However, if you go to a rheumatologist, what they tell the patient, there's no cure, it's hereditary, don't worry about it. Let's start you on NSAIDs. And when it gets really bad, then we go to sulfasalazine, methotrexate, you know all the drugs. And then I said to the one person, I says, well, why didn't they start you on those? That's a great question. I said, so they told you there's no cure. They said it's not your fault. Lifestyle has nothing to do with it. They're going to start you off on NSAIDs, which are supposed to be used rarely for acute pain.
Short term, yeah.
Yes, less than 48 hours, because if not, they start breaking down the GI. And then they're going to recommend these really heavy-duty drugs later on because they have really bad side effects, and they're going to wait for you. So I don't know if you went to you got to bring it. For me personally, I got to, especially for friends, right? I got to break it down into like kindergarten level.
Yeah.
So if you went to your mechanic and he said your brakes are bad, just make sure you hit them really good. And then when they get really bad, pull your emergency brake, but keep coming back every month. Nobody would, right? So I think part of it's just the system. It's almost like we're on this merry-go-round and people don't even stop and think. So what are some of your strategies across the board to help? And I know it's all customized individually, but what are some of your strategies for these autoimmune type of patients? I know the immune system is mostly in the intestinal tract.
Yeah.
So, and people you mentioned are inflamed. So what are some of the initial strategies you can recommend to people with their lifestyle and then maybe some of the key nutrients you like?
Yeah, absolutely. So in regards to that, education is huge, right? So teaching the patient, first of all, that there isn't a hereditary or genetic component. It's more associated with acquired illnesses. And there is a high potential that you can resolve these if we follow enough of a protocol to fix the problem, right? Address the problem and fix it. So first of all, giving them hope, realizing that there's a potential path out of this. But when it comes to patients coming in, due to the intensity of the illnesses typically I see, I'm looking at 3 to 12 months on average to really kind of get to the bottom and fix these problems. So patients don't want to wait 12 months before they see changes. They are looking at a few days to a few weeks.
Yeah, 12 hours.
They ditch you. So step one is I try and provide some level of function and relief. So if they're coming with significant joint pains, if they're coming in with GI distress or bowel regularities like every few hours, I got to address that, right? We got to at least give them sustainability. So if it comes to joints, we're looking at, they go to X-Flame, SPMs, pretty much, we dose that pretty high based upon the need. We'll say titrate up.
Well, I love that you're saying therapeutic dosing, right? Because people are like, well, can I take one? I'm like, no, not if you need,
my pain is a 10 out of 10. One capsule ain't going to do it.
Yes, I love it. So what is some of the dosing that you recommended with your experience, just to give people some confidence that it's okay? I mean, for SPMs, I've done 6 or even 9 in a day, three times a day, and it's really helped me personally. So what is some of the dosing you do for SPMs and then X-Flame?
Yeah, I'll typically do 2 at a time, and I'll say up to 4 to 5 doses a day.
Great.
To really meet the demand. And that gives the patient some leniency to try and use as needed throughout the day, pending the demand. And I use similar things like Calm Day in that way as well for anxiety. Like take one, if it doesn't do it, take another one in an hour. If it doesn't do it, you can go up to a certain max for the day. So I give patients maxes for the day and they work their way up. For GI inflammation, my go-to is I like to combo the GI Complete with the IgGs.
Oh, I love it.
That combo for me has been a staple and very successful. So I'll heavily scoop that. I've knocked out diverticulitis as a standalone with that combination. I've, multiple times, and there's a lot of benefit patients can get just from a sustainability standpoint. And then while they're at least functional and a little bit more stable, then we can do the diagnostics. We can figure out what's going on. Where is this coming from? Is there an infection that needs to be addressed? Is there an environmental concern? What's going on that needs to be resolved so that
So you get them cooled down a little bit first, getting some compliance, changing their diet, and then you're going to do some further testing, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that strategy, Doc, because often what would happen in our field, right, is the pendulum swung so far into testing for a while, it became like a testing contest. And I remember I went to a seminar and the doctor's like, timeout. Because how about we do blood work, which they probably already have, and we start their lifestyle. He says, because between the genetic testing, the MTHFR, all these SNPs, and then you go into this test, and he says, it could be thousands of dollars for somebody. And then we've gotten to the point where we're just treating the tests.
Right.
He says, where we didn't talk to the person about their stress levels and what's wrong with their finances, and is it taking care of a loved one or a sick kid or, a divorce, and all these different things people are going through. And it was really interesting because I was at the A4M and I was glad that somebody addressed it, because it was getting to the point where it was going to cost you 10 grand to go see a doctor to start with. And, then you're going to rule out people, and then it's going to be like, well, now what do I do? So I love how you start that. What is your philosophy on the diet component? Because my background, that is probably the biggest part that people don't realize how damaging it is.
Yeah. And just to speak to that testing component, a lot of the tests are really useful in from a confirmatory standpoint. I always tell my patients, I'm willing to treat you even if we don't test it anything. I mean, the therapies we're using have huge safety profiles. We have your history, we have your symptom profile, we have a likelihood of what's going on. We can trial a treatment process to do it conventionally 24/7, right? Try this, come back if it doesn't work. We can do that with way more efficacious results, even without testing if we had to. So I'm happy to treat patients most of the time without having to do deep dives, pending their financial constraints or what that may be. And that usually can still yield results if you have a good history. So, but in regards to the diet, my diet, I pretty much get people off of, if we can get them off of a lot of the processed foods, if we can cut out any significant additive foods, keep them on a whole food diet, higher protein contents. Typically, it's going to vary pending the patient. If there's GI pathology, I usually have them, cut down to smaller meals so they can digest better. Sometimes we're watching out for prebiotic FODMAP foods if they've got SIBO. We're looking at maybe increasing fiber in some situations. We're going to play basically within the world of Paleo-Mediterranean style, where
I love it.
Foods, high protein, lots of nutritional density, and we're cutting out a lot of the aggravants. And for some people, that's going to be some of their favorite foods, but they give them a chance to realize after a few weeks that it's kind of a big culprit in their symptom profile.
So how do you explain that? I think a lot of people equate health with weight, right? And then they're coming in and you're saying, wait a minute, you got to change your diet, and they may or may not be overweight.
Yeah.
So what do you feel is important with getting that person started with compliance factors? I mean, when you're starting out with the diet, are you incorporating any of the shakes to get them the protein levels higher? Because I find protein is probably the hardest thing for people to understand that they need more of. So what are some of your strategies when it comes to that? Because you're mentioning higher or moderate to higher protein, which I firmly believe in. But the average American is probably high carbs and high fat.
Yeah, and not omega-3 based quality.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trans fats, hydrogenated fats. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So my
I've been old
priority
enough.
for patients, yeah. So my priority for patients in regards to weight and weight loss is over nourishing them instead of cutting calories.
Mm,
I've had very little success cutting calories on patients long term. Short term, sure, obviously, physics says that you're going to lose weight no matter what you eat. Metabolically, you're going to be healthy. Are you going to have good body composition? No. I mean, if you're eating 3 Oreos a day, you're probably going to lose weight, but you're not going to feel good. You're not going to have good body composition. The goal for me is to get people, good body composition and feeling energized, right? So if you're wanting to lose 10 pounds versus are you trying to improve your body composition? That's why I always reiterate to people, a scale only tells you one thing. It doesn't tell you how you're functioning. So we do body composition analysis in office versus weight scales. And that gives patients real-time data. Well, you're actually improving your lean mass. You're actually improving your metabolic rate. You're actually improving your longevity. So getting protein quantities in is huge. We use all different types of your proteins. The rocket pop has been a big popularity hit recently. But we use all the proteins, which is nice about the diversity, right? You can hit the needs for patients. And I love the Ultimate Shake because it has such a good nutrient profile. But my philosophy is I can give you high levels of protein, high amounts of fiber, fruits, vegetables, and quality nutrition. You're going to be satiated and you're still going to have a lower calorie count than you would if it were processed foods. So you're going to feel good, you're going to meet your nutrient demands, and you're still going to be have a lower calorie count than if we were cutting calories and not changing the macronutrients.
Concerning the autoimmune clients, my experience was that like dairy products, people don't get it, and they'll say, "Why you use skim milk?" I'm like, "Okay, not it may be worse, right? Because you think it's good."
Right.
And then like they
For
and
the water.
cereal, yeah, well, cereal for breakfast. I'm like,
Yeah.
so we used to have a book in the wellness center called Cereal Killer. It was a bowl of Fruit Loops, and it was a real book, but it talked about how all these big conglomerates are really made the country sick because that's what people eat for breakfast.
Yeah.
So I always felt dairy, sugar, and then of course anything processed. But what do you find as some of the top two or three that are affecting this whole autoimmune situation? What your testing you do?
I think gluten and grains are definitely a huge culprit. Um, and predominantly in here in the US, I think a large part of that is the processing, is the additives and the toxicity that accompany it. So I mean, number one rule for me is no one really in the US eats gluten or should be eating gluten unless you're sourcing your wheat overseas and creating your own sourdough from scratch. Maybe we'll talk about it then. Dairy is probably the next on the list. Just again, same the processing piece. How we're GMO modifying and hormonally modifying our dairy, and then we're ultra pasteurizing it and creating a lot of just dead raw material you can't consume. You create an inflammatory process with dairy. There are some exceptions to that with foreign, sourcing and more of a raw.
Nobody has access to that, right? Or if they do, very few and far between. It's
Right.
like, you
Yeah.
know, they're going to the grocery store buying the store brand meats.
Yeah.
That meat has been loaded with hormones, and the cows are fed corn and soy, and they pump out 100 times the milk of a regular cow. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous what's
Absurd.
going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And this whole thing with the bread too. I personally try and stay away from bread as much as possible. Occasionally at a restaurant or something, but I find that like you said in the US. So did you grow up in Canada? How long did you live in Canada?
No, I grew up in the U.S. I lived in the Northeast. When I was young, my father would commute once a month for a few weekends, and he would a year, and he would train and pursue his education in Toronto, which is where he was.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
did a
so
lot of work up in Guelph in the 90s. There's a great naturopathic school in Guelph. And,
yeah.
I learned a couple of things up there. One is they don't waste anything, number one.
Mm,
And I learned that in Europe too. And most of the people are in pretty good shape. I didn't see a lot of
Yeah.
Even nowadays you see that it's changed quite a bit. Where I was a stocky kid, I wasn't quote unquote sloppy. Where now it's like kids are either in shape or
Yeah.
they're grossly out of shape, and I think a lot of it has to do with their eating. So dairy products and grains sound like the two biggest culprits that you see.
By far. Yeah. So, um, even, I mean, people always ask me about like, is honey bad or maple syrup bad? And to be honest with you, I have way less of a quarrel with adding those sugars, if you, especially if you're active, than eating some of the processed foods, some of the like the filler foods that we're seeing. And people will go gluten free, but doesn't mean that their food is quality either. You have to be eating whole food, meaning single ingredient food is really
Yeah,
important.
you can buy gluten-free cookies, I tell
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's still a cookie. I get it. But I think the whole foods, the stuff I always say, if the grocery stores were shut down, where could you find the food on the planet, right? God's
And
food.
training people to sufficiently nourish themselves throughout the day really cuts down on cravings, because people feel like I can't go without eating those things. I could never just eat whole foods. Well, your body wants to. So if you can make it a few weeks of nourishing yourself, your cravings and your body's function inflammation drops so much that you don't actually have a desire for those things. It's more based upon how much that dopamine, that candida, and those other responses are driving those cravings.
Yeah, well, the food's addicting. What they put in there, these biochemists are paid millions of dollars to make you addicted. I mean, there's an old commercial for Lay's potato chip. You can't eat just one, right? The Doritos, people are licking their fingers. You hear people come in and say, "My Mountain Dew." Like if you take it away, they're gonna have a temper tantrum. It's like, but I understand this stuff is addicting. That's why people say, "Oh, can you?" I says, "Me personally, no, I don't want any of it because if I eat it, I want more, especially sugar." And I think that's something that's with the candida component of it, and all these other critters and foreign invaders you had mentioned earlier, mycotoxins and molds, and I think that's the one thing that we really pride ourselves in nutritional frontiers. And I want you to hear you a little more about this GI combo with GI Complete and IgG, because we have the DMG in there, and the zinc carnosine, both with patents on it. And then you look at the IgG. This is actually a prescription in teragram at 5 grams a day.
Yeah.
There's over 45 published studies. The latest are on mycotoxins, C. diff, H. pylori. And the cool thing about the IgG is actually will bind, neutralize, and remove these foreign invaders. It's like a security, right? It's escorting the trouble out of the body,
Right.
and then your body can start to heal. So how do you utilize those two together? How many times a day? How long do you put people on them? Because you mentioned a really stubborn one is diverticulitis. And we've seen that quite a bit in Pittsburgh, especially because of the poor diets.
Yeah. So typically, and I see a lot of GI cases, whether it's an autoimmune IBD or if it's an IBS, the inflammatory component is pretty ubiquitous between the two. And so what we try and do is I diagnose microbial and food related triggers. So what we'll do is we do a stool sample, we'll do a blood test or both, one or the other, and we'll get an idea of the triggers, but it takes weeks for those to come back from a testing standpoint. So while the patients are suffering and waiting for the results, I usually throw IgGs and GI Complete on board. One, no downside. Two, they're going to get sustainability and some relief in the meantime. I'll start with like a bell curve where I will start one scoop of each at the same time, empty stomach, once a day. Within a few short days, we're going to start doubling that, right? So we're going to go one scoop of each the first day. We're going to go one scoop of each twice on the second day. And then we potentially even go to 3 times a day on the third day on an empty stomach, and hold that typically, pending how they're tolerating, if they need more, if they do well at 2, whatever that may be. And then we'll titrate down once they're stable and keep them on maintenance until test results come back. So we'll kind of ramp up quickly and then hold them at a maintenance to keep them stable. But yeah, like you said, you have an IgG that helps to bind, remove microbes, toxins, pathogens, waste, and inflammation. And then you got GI Complete, which is going to help start healing, start soothing, start recovering some of that damage. So that's a great 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I love it because the great thing about the IgG, one ingredient of the year a couple of years ago at the Supply Side West show, we were there, and then all the published studies on it, and it's not only the studies on removing the pathogen, but also the studies on symptomatology across the board reduced within 14 days. And some of my clients will use IgG and GI Complete 2 or 3 times a day for the first 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, depending on the person and the severity. And then over time, as they're starting to heal and recover, you know, um, then they can maybe transition down on it. Can you talk a little bit about that whole component? I don't even know if I call it modern medicine because conventional medicine is really naturopathic medicine, right?
Yeah.
But modern medicine, I don't know if they even buy into or believe in this whole thing with not only the candida issue, but the whole thing we call is dysbiosis or leaky gut.
Yeah.
Can you explain that whole situation in the body? What is going on, and how do we fix it?
Yeah, I mean, so it comes back to terrain theory over
Oh
germ
yeah.
theory, right? So as we tie in, our ecosystem is mostly oriented in our gastrointestinal tract. We're a product of how, and you think the GI tract is a long tube of a highway. It's your highway in and out of the body. Not only is it bringing food and nutrients in, but it's also bringing waste and toxins out of the body. If you intentionally put toxins and waste into the body by what you're consuming, you're only adding to what your body's trying to eliminate. So what happens is if you pretty much have a ton of waste sitting in your gastrointestinal system, let's say you're constipated and it's not even moving down the track, you're dehydrated and it's
Mm.
just sitting there, and then you're on proton pump inhibitors or something like that to delay the digestive acids, and then you're ending up with no security system for the microbes coming in. It's a recipe for a terrain disaster. Your ecosystem's a mess. It's going to breed more microbes, between parasitic, fungal, bacterial. You're going to have, that's the dysbiosis component, which is going to lead to inflammation, which is going to cause the leaky gut, which is going to cause a barrier disruption, and then food reactions start occurring, histamine responses start occurring, and it cascades into autoimmune conditions because your immune system's so reactive to the inflammation going on. So it's all kind of a ball rolling down a hill, a train rolling off the tracks, right? It's a cascade of events. So when it comes to dysbiosis, I mean, first things first is you have to start mobilizing the gastrointestinal tract. If you're stagnant, you're going to breed bacteria, you're going to breed microbes. So the common diagnosis nowadays is becoming SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And modern conventional medicine is treating with a 2-week course of an antibiotic that costs $2,200. And
Oh,
the reactivation or the reoccurrence rate is in the 60 to 80% range, because the philosophy is the bug, the germ versus the terrain. Treat the bug, knock it out with an antibiotic for 2 weeks. But if you don't fix the terrain and you don't mobilize and improve the digestive capacity, your reoccurrence, I mean, you're going to have the same problem, just regrowing.
yeah, it's
So,
like pulling weeds, right? If you don't
yeah,
get to the
or the
root.
swamp effect, right? If you don't mobilize the swamp, you're just going to breed the pool grows algae again, right? You got to filter it. So the idea is that dysbiosis is a product of the terrain, the toxicity, the foods consumed, the waste, and that.
Yeah, if we just took a step back, the average person, right? Just took a step back and said, "Oh, SIBO, small intestinal bowel overgrowth." They're just describing what's going on, right? It's like contact dermatitis means your skin's inflamed. Like
Yeah.
some of the ICD-9 codes, and when they're reckoning, looking at this and they're diagnosing, sometimes it's like almost they're just telling you what they see, which is fine. But more importantly, what is the
The why.
solution?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
why.
Why is
Mhm.
it happening, and what can I do? What's the underlying cause? The underlying cause is not you need antibiotics, because all the research proves within 90 to 120 days, you have like quadruple the risk of diarrhea and affecting the microbiome, right? And then you factor that in with somebody who's taking antibiotics in their dairy, in their meat that they're buying. It's become this perfect storm now where, yeah, no wonder we're seeing such a rise in this. Um, so when you working with people that are just starting out with you, what are some of the foundational steps that they need to take that you feel are going to drastically increase their success rate? Because I know sometimes they expect, oh, just give me the antibiotic and I'll be done, right? Give me the pain med, my headache will go away. Give me the stitches, my cut's healed, right? Where this is a little bit different. I love how the expectation is 3 to 12 months, because I think people feel like, oh, I just got this symptom. This just started. But it could have started 5 or 10 or 20 years, sometimes even as a kid. So what are some of the first steps they have to take in your experience to be very successful?
Yeah, I do ask a lot of patients. It's a big requirement on their end to try and to push them to do a lot. And it's a lot of change in their lifestyle. The number one thing that I find from the lowest hanging fruit is hydration. Doesn't cost anything. Most everyone's dehydrated. Yep. And I think that is a huge component of health in addition to what you eat. So that for most people, I feel is a no-brainer, and then but just needs to be educated. And then second to that is sleep. I think sleep is such an important component that is just underappreciated and underdiagnosed from a treatment perspective. Getting people out of that cortisol flare where they're like up all night from 2 to 5 a.m. because they have too much stress and anxiety. And if I can get a little bit of support to help them regulate their sleep, their detox improves, their hormones improve, their energy improves, their metabolic function improves, everything goes in the right direction. So I think from a lifestyle perspective, hydration and sleep.
I love it. Hydration and sleep. And you said 2 to 5. Are you doing a one-on-one session with me now? Okay. Hey, I'm with you. Last night I took a late nap yesterday, which is I don't like to take a nap too late, but I do like to take a nap. I took a nap like right after the workday, somewhere around 5:15, and I meditated, but sometimes I'll doze off. And then by 9:30 last night, I was ready for bed. 10 o'clock, I was out. I woke up once to use the restroom, and I didn't get up till after 6, which is fantastic. I've really been working on this a lot. You had mentioned Calm Day, and I'll do that in L-theanine a couple times during the day.
Yep.
And at night, I really find I've been doing the Adrenamax early and then adrenal glandular. I really need to get my cortisol balanced, right?
Yeah.
And that's usually what's keeping people up or waking them up.
Got my glandular right here. I got 3 kids, so I got to make sure that my glandular is supporting me too. So
yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head, right?
And a lot of patients don't realize the sleep quality component, right? They think, well, I didn't think I woke up. I got 7.5 hours. But like if you add up the sleep debt that you've had over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe more from inadequate sleep versus poor sleep, you're wearing on yourself significantly, right? So I tell people, you can do wearable, grab a Whoop strap or something, and tells you from an HRV standpoint if you're recovering sufficiently, right? And if not, we need to focus on that.
So what are some of the key factors that you find in your experience? You mentioned cortisol and stress, right?
Yeah.
As a big one. I know, look, I've been guilty of this too. I don't do it anymore. First of all, I don't have a TV in my room, and I barely watch TV at all. Usually it's a football game, which there's no football right now, thank God. So I'm not a big TV guy anymore. Used to be. But I do have this phone, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has one of these.
Yep.
And I do know now, I was told by one of my clients, she was reprimanding me. She said, do not keep that in your bedroom.
Yeah.
I said, what about when I'm doing I try and justify. What about when I'm doing meditation? She goes, put it in the other room and put it up louder. She goes, and by the time it's over, you'll be sleeping. So I did that last night, and it worked well. Yeah. So those are a couple things I noticed. But all my health issues over the years have usually been right around the times I wasn't sleeping well. The other thing is I feel the environment of the room, right? It should be dark. It should be comfortable. It should be the right temperature. Mm-hmm. I use a mask sometimes at night too. So what are some other simple things people can implement today that help them better sleep? You had the adrenal glandular. Do you like magnesium, sleep time? What else do you like?
Yeah. So kind of just to speak to the sleep, the circadian rhythm is so important, right? And we don't abide by it anymore because we have modern appliances and lights and things like that, right? So getting people kind of regimented on their sleep based on the idea that you're going to bed soon after it gets dark-ish and waking up around the same time as the sun is essential in regards to health and healing, right? Regards to the phone, the blue light, the screens, late night news, like let's just provoke anxiety all night long. My phone is airplane mode. If it's in the room, if I need the alarm for some reason, and if not, we try and keep it out of the room. We don't really do too much TV in our house anyway, but if we have television, it's before dinner so that we're not having any blue light late night. Those are all components. Comfortable, temperature, dark. You want it to be an environment that invites kind of calming, restfulness, sleep. Put a house plant in your room for air quality or an air filtration device. You're breathing in indoor air. And in New England here, we're inside at least half of the year, so make sure your air quality is decent. Those are components you want to consider. And then, like I said, is habitual routine. You're going to bed roughly at the same time consistently, waking up consistently at the same time. And that really does let the body and circadian rhythm re-regulate.
Well, I love that you're addressing hydration and sleep because number one cause I found over the years for people is, constipation, gut, right, is because they're dehydrated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Second thing is that when your stress level's high, like you had mentioned, you need sleep. I always wonder, like, why does that affect gut? Well, I read this great, study. Dr. Jeff Bland had presented it that when in a very simplified explanation, when stress is real high, GI repair goes down. Yeah, because you look at it for survival mechanisms, right? There's an old book like Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, right? Because as soon as they're out of the harm's way from the lion, they don't think about it anymore. Where humans have this innate ability to think and probably overthink. And now we're given these messages about fear and divide. That's what people tend to focus on. So, wow, I can't believe that this one's so fast. We need a part two, Doc. I'll tell you what. Just feel like I'm getting in a good rhythm with you. But are you accepting new patients and clients? And if so, how do people get a hold of you?
Yes, we are. We do virtual. We're helping people throughout the country and abroad as well. So happy to help as needed. Our information is on our website at rootsmedicalcenter.com. We're also on social media platforms as well. You can get a hold of us there.
I love it. So you help people all over. They can just do the Zoom or the phone and get to meet with you that way. And if you're in the New England area, it's worth the trip. And I found that if somebody really needs the help, they're willing to travel too. So
Sure.
I love it now, and that's one of the ways technology can really help people. And my mentor told me a long time ago. He says, "Let technology allow you to work from everywhere, but not from anywhere, but not everywhere." Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Create some balance.
I go, oh yeah. He goes, don't do it at dinner. Don't do it with your kids or your wife. Like, pick and choose when you use it. It just means that you can be in contact anywhere. So I love the fact that you're using that to help people all over the U.S. So last question. What's your favorite formula by Nutritional Frontiers? I got to ask. You're a big fan of ours and big supporter, and we greatly appreciate it.
That's a tough one. I have a lot of
You can give two.
I'm gonna go with GI Complete because of how much I use it. I think everyone gets GI Complete because the amount of people in GI distress. And it's unique. There's other IgG formulations, none are flavored that matches the GI Complete well. But I think your GI Complete is unique with a lot of things you can't find elsewhere, which I love. And I'm gonna call an audible on this one. The powdered line. So what I do is I mix the pros, oranges, reds, purples, the proline greens, with a lot of the protein powders.
Oh, I love
I
it.
love the combo because it simplifies, but I get a lot in at once. So I'm going to say that is my second.
Oh, I love it. I just did a shake before this call. It was the Super Shake peanut butter, because I'm a peanut butter guy, with the chocolate greens. 2 scoops of each, get my 40 grams of protein, and now I'm good till I eat later on. So I love that combination. And, there's so many proteins on the market, but I feel ours is super clean.
Yeah.
And they digest really nice, and they give people the high quality nutrients when you add the colors into it. Well, thanks, Dr. Zach. We appreciate everything. This is a great session today. I'm sure a lot of people are going to love it at World of Wellness. World of Wellness, Wellness Week, number 120, going on throughout the month of May, all the way till right after Memorial Day. We're going to May 26th, so the next 2 weeks. So thanks, Doc. We appreciate everything. And thanks for all the support out there. If you want to order anything, go to World of Wellness, wowpgh.com. That is wowpgh.com. Or you can just call. We still use the phones, believe it or not. A human being picks up, not AI, not voicemail, not hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They actually pick up. We have Beth and Lauren working the phones, 412-922-WELL. That's 412-922-9355. Thanks, Doc. We appreciate it. And thanks to Phil for running the board for us. Have a great day, and God bless.
Thank you.